Hello everyone, in this short video tutorial I will show you how to use drawio, an online diagramming tool for creating ERD diagrams for one of your assignments in this course that involves the creation of an ERD model. Now before I show you how to work with drawio, I would like to emphasize that there are so many tools out there for creating all kinds of diagrams, including ERD diagrams. For example, one of the tools that has been quite popular over the years is Microsoft Visio. Microsoft Visio is an application that sometimes is included with Microsoft Office, although in most licensing arrangements you need to purchase it separately. And this software can be used for all kinds of diagrams, including ERD diagrams. And the only downside to this application is that it's not free. It's not included by default in this Office 365 that most students seem to have. Also, over the years, I've been using another online tool called glyphy.com, and I think this is the tool that I'm mentioning in relation to assignment 3 in this class. Now, the thing about this tool, over the years, they keep changing their licensing arrangements every few months. So it was a completely free tool, then it became a paid tool. You need to pay a license fee, and if you don't pay a license fee, there is a limit to functionality. So with all those things constantly changing, I kind of drifted away from glyphy.com and I started using drawio. So this is the tool that I will show you today. So to access this tool, you go to drawio. So you should see me typing the URL address in the browser. And then it will ask you whether you want to create a new diagram or open an existing diagram. At any point, you can save your diagram in the form of XML file to your computer, and that's what I highly recommend. And by the way, this was one of the limitations of Glyphy. Like, this free version doesn't let you save anything, and it creates like a lot of confusion later on. So that was one of the reasons why I switched to drawio. So you select create new diagram, and then I highly encourage you to explore all those different types of diagrams that you have here. It's a very powerful tool. I'm using it for creating all kinds of diagrams, not just ERD diagrams. So I would like to encourage you to explore all those different templates that they have. But what I will do for now is just create a blank diagram. Again, if you go to more shapes, you see like all those additional shapes that you can select. Some of those collections I'm not even familiar with. For example, if you're TSM major, you can use all kinds of I think there are several collections for creating a networking diagram, like there's a collection from Cisco. Then there's a general networking diagram, all kinds of collections of shapes for specifically for creating a network layout. The same thing for software development. For example, there's a collection of iOS elements. For example, if you're creating a prototype or mock-up for an Apple or iPhone application, that's what you can use. The general collection of UML elements, all kinds of collections are available here. What we need for the purposes of creating an ERD diagram is the following category of shapes: entity relation under the software tab. So when you check this entity relation and you click apply, you should have all the tools, all the visual tools that you need for creating an ERD diagram right here. Okay, so this is how you do it. So for example, let's say you want to create a relationship between students and majors, and for now we'll put student, which is the name of our entity. Then we're going to have student ID, which is our primary key. Then we'll have student name, and then student address. Okay, and then the other entity that we need is major, meaning major of studies, major. And here we're going to have major name, which is our primary key. Then let's say major credit hours. This variable, this attribute will track how many credit hours one needs to complete in order to qualify to get this major. And then what else? Let's say major people number of people majoring in this particular major. I just like randomly creating attributes. I'm not sure whether they're good ones, because my goal is to show you how to create those diagrams in using drawio. So those are the two entities that we have. So let's think about cardinality. One student can be enrolled in 0 or many majors. Let's say our university allows students to have no major selected until, let's say, third year. At the maximum, student can be enrolled in 2 majors, meaning having a major and a minor. So once it's more than 1, you just say many. So it's 0, many, right? So we need to find something on this side. And then 1 major can be populated by 0 students. At the minimum, let's say it's a new major, nobody has enrolled yet. And at the maximum, it can have many students. So we need this. Okay. So this is how you create it. And then there are many tools for formatting, like for example, you can select a curve instead of a straight line, just to make it prettier or eliminate some overlaps or intersections. Okay. So this is our diagram. Now you know that you cannot have a many-to-many relationship because you cannot implement this kind of many-to-many relationship using tables. Or it's very hard to implement using tables. So so what I will do, I will replace this many-to-many relationship, the so-called non-specific relationship, with an associative entity. And this associative entity would be called, let's say, student major registration. I explained to you in my other lectures that it's sometimes hard to explain what an associative entity is because there is no real-world analogy or example of that associative entity. Because when I say student, we understand what we mean by student. When I say major, you understand what we mean by major because you have many majors in front of you. Now, student major registration is an artificial entity. It's an associative entity designed for the purposes, created for the purpose of linking those 2 entities together so that we can eliminate the so-called many-to-many or non-specific relationship. Now, the only real-world analogy that I can give you is that an associative entity is like a general ledger, meaning whenever those 2 entities come into a transaction, a record is created in this entity. So you can think of it as a journal. That's what a general ledger is in accounting. It's like a journal where you record all the accounting transactions first. So whenever those 2 entities come into a transaction, whenever a student declares major, you create an entry in this table or in this journal or in this entity. So student major registration will have a primary key, registration ID. Okay. Let me make this entity a bit bigger. Now, this primary key will be a compound primary key because this entity is linking these 2 entities together. So one part will be student ID, and the way you indicate that this student ID is a part of this primary key is by putting a dot in front of it. And the second part will be major name, right? Now, let's remove this primary key because technically speaking, this is a foreign key now, right? Although I'm not requiring you to mark it here. In the case of compound keys of associative entities, I'm not requiring you to put FK. Although I am requiring you to put FK and PK in all other instances. The reason I'm not requiring it here because it's clear to me that those are the primary keys of the entities that this associative entity is linking, right? We can add another attribute, let's say, in addition to the ones that we have, we'll have student major registration date, right, when the student declared major. So this is how we resolve this non-specific many-to-many relationship. So now, let's think about cardinalities. One student can declare major, can register for a particular major. Maybe declaration is a better term, but anyways, one student can declare a major 0 or many times. Now, one major declaration is exactly for one student, right? So one transaction per student per declaration. So that's why the kind of cardinality we need is, one second, let me find it here. So this one, right? One student can declare 0 or many majors, but one major declaration or registration is performed for exactly one student. So if a student declares 2 majors, then there'll be 2 transactions, 2 records in this entity, right? And then let's think about here. One major can be declared 0 or many times, but one declaration is for exactly one major. In other words, a student cannot declare 2 majors in one transaction. He or she needs to declare one major first and then second one. So we need the same cardinality here, so I'm just copying it. So one student major declaration or registration is for exactly one major, although one major can be declared many times. Let me just change the shape of this to a straight line so that it looks better. Okay. Now, there are some nuances. I'm talking about some visual elements that may or may not be there, depending on what kind of conventions here used. And there is a very strict set of standards under UML how to create those ERD diagrams, meaning what kind of visual elements to use. I'm just requiring you this. Make sure you have primary keys marked like this. Make sure you have all the foreign keys marked. Make sure you use proper dot notation for compound primary keys. And that's about it. You don't need to use like any diamonds as in your textbook for indicating that this is an associative entity, because I see it here. But if in doubt, just stick to the convention that you have in my presentation on ERD modeling. Just one more thing. If you want to save it, just to go to File, Save As, and save it to the device, and it will save it in the form of XML diagram, so later on you can open it, right? If you want to insert it into your Word file, just go Export As and select this PNG export. If you export your diagram and the font is too small to the point where your image file is not readable, then go to Custom Export, go to Export As Advanced, and select High Resolution. So basically select, this is like width in pixels. Select like, I don't know, at least 7,000 to make sure that you have a high-res image so that I can zoom in and read all your elements and give you feedback. Because if you cannot see it, if you cannot zoom in on it, if it's a low-res image, then I may not be able to really understand what you're doing in your ERD diagram. So that's it. That completes my presentation. Thank you for watching.